Topping our politics lead, a tale of two Republican leaders in two vastly different directions they're trying to take their party. Today, the House's top Republican, Kevin McCarthy, once again defended the Republican National Committee after it censured two Republicans, Congressman Adam Kinzinger and Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and seemingly referred to the January 6th attack as legitimate political discourse. That's a quote. But Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell blatantly condemned the RNC's actions, and as CNN's Manu Raju reports for us now, this disagreement is creating another split in the party, which is gearing up for the midterms.
Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell this week tried to convey the reality about January 6th.
The violent insurrection for the purpose of trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after a legitimately certified election from one administration to the next.
But many in his party won't have it.
Do you agree with the Republican leader's characterization of what happened on January 6th?
It was mostly a peaceful protest.
I don't know whether I would go that far, but it was something that we're not proud of.
But not a violent insurrection.
Oh, it was violent. I just don't, I wouldn't call it an insurrection. Violent protest.
Senator Ted Cruz, who used to refer to the events of January 6th as a
Violent terrorist attack.
until getting blowback from the right, rejected the GOP leader's comments.
The word insurrection is politically charged propaganda. I think it is a mistake for Republicans to repeat the political propaganda of Democrats and the corporate media.
The debate was ripped open last week when the Republican National Committee took the unprecedented step of censuring two Republicans, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, for joining with Democrats to investigate the attack. Adding to the controversy was language in the resolution saying that two Republicans were persecuting citizens who engaged in legitimate political discourse. House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy defended the RNC and said the resolution should have specified that January 6 investigators had subpoenaed some RNC members who were in Florida at the time of the attack.
I think had they explained out what they were talking to, this would be controversial because they weren't referring to people who had broken into this building. Everyone under. So you support that? You support it. The RNC put out their resolution. I think they have a right to do their resolution on what they want.
RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel also tried to clean it up, saying she condemns all acts of violence, and the probe has gone beyond its scope, pointing to a subpoena sent to an RNC member who was not in D.C. on January 6th. But there's a reason why some RNC members have been subpoenaed. The committee is looking into allegations that individuals tried to submit fake electoral certificates in 7 states that Joe Biden won.
I don't think it was a wise statement on the RNC's part. Violence is always not legitimate. Their statement put us backwards. I don't think it's right.
Now, just moments ago, the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell responded to the conservatives who are downplaying the notion that this was a violent insurrection, saying it to us, this is pretty simple. We are in the middle of a national crime wave. The Republican Party is a pro-police, tough-on-crime party, and I am a pro-police, tough-on-crime Republican across the board. Jake?
All right, Manu Raju on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so much. Let's discuss. Alice, this afternoon we also got a statement from Donald Trump about Mitch McConnell saying, quote, Mitch McConnell does not speak for the Republican Party and does not represent the views of the vast majority of its voters. Is he right?
Look, he also called McConnell Old Crow, which actually is pretty good bourbon. But I'll say this, look, I think rational Republicans of the Republican Party view this all the same way. They view that we had free and fair elections. They view that Donald Trump lost. They view January 6th as an insurrection, and it was not legitimate political discourse. I think the Republican Party, including Donald Trump, does a tremendous disservice when we are engaged in the circular firing squad and more focused on the big lie than opening up the big tent, when we should be taking it to the Democrats. We should be taking it to them on their policies with regard to the economy, with regard to inflation and COVID and the border. But here's the thing, they're more focused on going against Liz Cheney and Mitch McConnell. Our opponents are Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden.
Okay. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I'll bring it to you, Powers. The question is, who actually represents Republican Party voters these days? Is it Mitch McConnell or is it Donald Trump?
Well,
I mean, she talked about rational Republicans.
I was going to say,
What percentage of the
a
Republican
large
Party?
percentage of Republicans, unfortunately, do believe the big lie, right? So I think it's probably fair to say that rational people don't believe that, but a lot of Republican voters do believe that. And so I would actually argue that Donald Trump probably speaks a little bit more for the voters, at least the base of the party. But Mitch McConnell also represents the Republican Party. Obviously, he's the leader in the Senate, and I think he clearly believes that it's time to move past Trump and that he doesn't want to pick fights with him. And what Alice just said, which is the Republican Party should be focused on attacking Joe Biden, not attacking each other.
Yeah, Casey, a few weeks or months ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene said to Steve Bannon that they represent the base of the Republican Party, that they're not fringe. They represent the base of the Republican Party. Here's Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene talking, or I think earlier today.
Not only do we have the D.C. jail, which is the D.C. gulag, but now we have Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police spying on members of Congress, spying on the legislative work that we do, spying on our staff, and spying on American citizens that want to come talk to their representatives. This government has turned into something it was
All right,
never...
so that's enough of that, but I mean, I guess
Gazpacho.
the gazpacho police, I assume she meant the Gestapo police.
I do too.
Which is another reference that would be an offensive one that she makes
Maybe she
inappropriately.
did it on purpose to
Maybe-
avoid said accusations.
Right, no,
Friday.
nobody can accuse her of using anti-Semitic tropes or Holocaust belittling tropes if she is referring to the gazpacho police.
I guess she's belittling the Gestapo by calling them gazpacho. I don't know, who knows?
By the way, in
Good
San
point.
Francisco, they could very well have a gazpacho police, just as a separate issue if it's too warm.
What are the import-export rules around gazpacho?
I'm
Jake?
not
Tell me.
concerned. I guess my question is, why are people siding with that? Like, you have a choice here. What is the incentive structure where somebody would say, yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene's side of this, not Liz Cheney. I want to be on the gazpacho police side of this.
Jake, all I can say on that is that there are very few leaders in the Republican Party who've been willing to stand up and say what Liz Cheney has said, and instead Republicans are hearing from their news outlets, many of which are increasingly to the right of Fox News, and the information that they're consuming is telling them that this big lie is actually true, and they're choosing to believe it because Donald Trump was particularly out there about saying, look, the reason I bash the media is so that when you write a story that's true, I can say plausibly you shouldn't believe them, and they won't. So I think that's a big part of it. But look, Mitch McConnell's comments were interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, he has been someone who has stood on principle on January 6th. I will give him that. But he never does anything if it doesn't line up with his ambitions to retain power, both inside the Senate as the majority leader, and that means worrying about how his senators feel, but also worrying about how the electorate feels. And he knows that so long as Republicans are having this fight, and they are literally divided. They are divided into two different groups. There is the base of the party, the furthest of which are with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then there are a lot of people who are alienated from Donald Trump's party and who want an alternative. But he knows he's not going to win back the Senate majority if they're talking about this. If
Right.
people are out there calling January 6th legitimate political discourse. If he's out there talking about inflation, he might win. So that's, I think, part of why he went out and did this, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. And that talks about where the country is as a whole, as opposed to just the Republican Party itself.
What's your take on this?
On a granular level, because I think you're hitting on a very important point right now, you have to look at who in his caucus also is up for re-election. When you have senators like Lisa Murkowski, who was just talking to you the other day about this, who is up for re-election, and she often is out of line with what Donald Trump says, and you want your senators and your caucus to trust you and get re-elected. Her opponent is a Trump-endorsed Republican, so that's one thing that he may be taking into consideration. But when you ask what the incentive is, though, for people to take this argument, what wins in a House race is not the same as wins statewide in a Senate, and a primary in a House
Right.
race, or what wins statewide in a Senate race. Those are not the same argument. And so it may be beneficial for some House Republicans or Kevin McCarthy to take one side of this issue that does not make sense for a senator who's up for re-election who's a Republican or Senate candidate.
Well, and speaking of primaries, there's also the factor that many are keeping in the back of their minds. They realize if they stick their head too far out of the foxhole, they're going to be knocked down by Donald Trump. So mark my word, after the filing deadlines in a lot of these states where people realize, hey, I don't have a primary opponent and Donald Trump cannot put one in against me, then we're going to see, I believe, a lot more people coming out saying, let's stop talking about the past and let's start talking about the future. And that's going to happen after these filing deadlines.
I want to show something to you, Alice, just to make you feel better. Here is Alabama Governor Kay Ivey. She's up for re-election, and here's her new ad. And she takes on Joe Biden the way you wanted to, in a creative way. Take a look.
Growing up, my mom and dad told us, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Well, here's what I have to say about Joe Biden. Poor Joe. Bless his heart.
As we say in the South, bless their heart.
I thought you'd like that.
I love
And
that.
also, no lies.
No
No lies about the election. No lies about January 6th.